Today, we want to discuss a situation that's going on, that has been going on for quite a while. Within the world system, we have a dichotomy of those who work and live in the heavenly will of God, as opposed to those evil people who corrupt creation. So what we want to do today is compare those two situations. We have people that corrupt creation who are living the way the world lives in the world system without caring about the effect that it has on God's creation. If you look around the world at our warring madness and all of the violence and destruction and the deliberate targeting of innocent people, you know that that cannot be in God's will. It has to be something that is occurring because of evilness in the world. And we have to look at the fact that what evil is doing something opposed to God. So if that's the problem that we're facing, then we need to see that on one hand we have godly people, and on the other side we have the evil people. And as Jesus teaches us, that broad is the way that leads to destruction, and narrow is the way that leads to life or heaven. And that's occurring because most people in the world live by worldly standards, with all its violence, bloodshed, suffering, and death. And the majority of the people that are suffering and dying are animals. So we need to face this fact. Evil people corrupt creation. Godly people free creation from its corruption. So whatever we do, we need to think about this in our everyday lives. If what we want to do involves causing animals to suffer and die because we are raising and eating them, or just eating them because we're buying them in sanitized cellophane wrap packages in the supermarket, we're still causing the suffering and death. And suffering and death doesn't exist because in heaven there is no pain, there's no mourning, and there's no death. So we need to think about everything that we do in terms of living in God's heavenly will or living in the corruption of this earth. And the problems that we have are self-induced in most cases. People desire something without thinking of the problems. Now let's go back to the eating of meat. Just use that as an example. If we eat animal products, we have a whole slew of chronic diseases which are affected by those foods. If we eat the plant food diet that God created us for us to eat in Eden, we don't get sick, or we get very few illnesses. But all diabetes, the type 2 diabetes, is caused by eating too much fat, and animal fat in particular. So if we get off of the animal fat and eat the plant food diet that God has, then we're back to living in His heavenly will, but we also stop the suffering of people that are on all of the things that need to be done medically for people that have diabetes. But there's more to it than that. Not only do we cause illness to ourselves, but we cause illness to other people who are following our examples. And when we get sick, we cause the medical industry to spend more money to take care of us than somebody who is living in God's heavenly will. And we also increase the suffering and death of animals in pharmaceutical laboratories. What we have to realize is that evil people corrupt creation. And we need to think about that and the fact that if we do these things, we are some of these evil people. So what are we going to do? We have to find a way of not only visualizing it in our own minds, but bringing it to the surface so that everybody that we deal with, everything that goes on, we need to show them the difference between living in the heavenly will of God and living in the corrupt ways of this world with all its pain, suffering, and death. Now, people get sick and die because they get various cancers, heart disease, strokes, and very little of that occurs when we don't clog our blood vessels. Men are very concerned because they have, erectile dysfunction, and that's all caused by eating animal products because the fat causes plaque in the blood vessels. You don't get proper blood flow, and we have problems. People have heart attacks, and they take all kinds of medicine. I have a neighbor that spends over $1,000 a month on medications, and he refuses to change the diet. And everything that he has a problem with is diet related. So what are we going to do? Are we going to go along with the sick people of this world who want to stay in this world, who like to be sick? They obviously do, or they wouldn't continue to do it. And even if they deny it, they're still doing it. Why does a smoker that gets cured of cancer, knows they can't go back to smoking, start smoking again? Why do people that know that eating animal fat foods will cause diabetes, and yet they continue to do it? Doesn't make any sense when we look at it with a heavenly view. Why did God tell the Jews that they wouldn't get sick in the wilderness? Well, he gave them manna to eat, which was a heavenly bread without animals. The people didn't like that. So what they did is they complained and wanted quail, and God gave them 3 feet of dead quail all around the campsite. And how do we know that they were dead? Because quail don't pile themselves on top of each other 3 feet deep. So we know they were dead quail. And a lot of them got sick and died because of their gluttony. Well, I never heard of people dying from eating romaine lettuce and onions and beans and other things. They die from eating the wrong foods. So we have to look at what's happening in this world. Instead of being conservative on our use of God's creation, we waste God's creation. We don't recycle. We use a lot of fossil fuels instead of trying to find alternatives. And we fight to take away regulation that helps protect the environment because it interferes with our personal lifestyles. Or let's say the worldly people's lifestyles, because we shouldn't include ourselves in these things if we're living in God's heavenly will. But it's a societal problem. It's not just your problem or my problem, it's the whole society. And if it doesn't stop somewhere, and if it doesn't begin to change somewhere, we're going to stay in the same position we're in the same boat, and we're going to all sink together. But if we take a stand, if we operate the rescue boat, if we say this is the way we should live, and look at us, follow what we do, then we're going to make a difference. So, know for a fact that evil people corrupt creation, and heavenly people free creation from its present corruption. Amen.